Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. Thank you for watching this webinar. So we are very happy to have this webinar, and the topic of this today Philanthropy Hub webinar is refugee issue and dilemma during COVID-19 crisis. So we bring together today three speakers from Lebanon, from Malaysia, and also from Turkey. And our host today is Brother Hassan Al-Akra, who is himself is a refugee. So before we pass the session to Brother Hassan, we would like to give some introduction to what is Philanthropy Hub. So Philanthropy Hub is actually an initiative to connect people who love to do good and to connect people in terms of knowledge sharing, inspiring the global citizen on how to do good and to serve for the humankind. And this is actually, Philanthropy Hub is actually an initiative by Philandio. Philandio is a social enterprise, social business for impact that work as a social impact advisor for non-profit organization, for corporates, and also for the public agencies. So I believe that this is not our first webinar. Today session is actually the second series of all 8 series altogether. So we will end our series after Shawwal, inshallah. So this is the second series, and today we bring our Brother Hassan as a host for today, and Brother Hassan also leads a self-established organization, which is Al Hassan Volunteer Network. But at the same time, he lead our Philandio Heart, a charity or a social impact and community engagement arm of Philandio. Let me introduce a bit Brother Hassan. He is a 20 years old Syrian student at Nottingham University of Malaysia. He is a refugee. He came to Malaysia last 2012 at 12 years old. So just imagine how small he was during that time, and the things that he really said is because of in the world still there is a discrimination, and also he is far from his homeland, Syria. The worst part that he faced was when he was detained by the Malaysian authority because he did not have, he was working with one company, food company, and then was detained in a detention center at the age of 14 years old. So the situation of the detention center is out of words to describe. And starting from there, he started to tell himself that I need to do something for the refugee kids, for the right of the refugee, and at the same time to inspire the youth to become to do volunteer for the community. Without further ado, I'll pass this session to Brother Hassan, and also to introduce the other speaker. Most welcome, Hassan.
All right, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being with us today. So I would like to introduce our speakers for the day. We have Miss Lillian Pan. She's a humanitarian and the co-founder of the Daniel Foundation. We have Sister Shema. She is a psychosocial support officer at Doctors Worldwide. And we have Mr. Hammam, who's the founder of Kainuna, it's a social entrepreneurship incubator based in Lebanon. So to start with the first question of the day to all of our speakers, maybe we can start with Sister Shaima to tell us a little bit about Worldwide Turkey organization, what kind of project and support that you guys do, and some of the campaigns, some of the projects, and also what are your aims, who are your target beneficiaries when dealing with the refugees in Turkey, and what inspired you as a person, Sister Shaima, to do this? What made you do this? Because it's not an easy job to deal with refugees, and especially in a country where there are over 1 million of it. What inspired you to start? So, Sister Shema, maybe you can enlighten us a bit more about Doctors Worldwide.
Okay, thank you, Hassan. Hello, everyone. I'm Shema Demirlikan. I work for Doctors Worldwide organization. I'm psychosocial support officer in a project of Doctors Worldwide, which I will explain in detail. So I supervise the organization's psychosocial support and health activities targeting refugees. If I need to explain our organizations, Doctors Worldwide, it was founded in 2000 in Turkey, in Istanbul. And since then, since 2000, it's operated in more than 50 countries in the area of health. The main aim of the organization is to give health service to the people all over the world which do not have proper access to health. So there are voluntary medical teams of the organization which goes to these countries to operate, to do operations or to give trainings. So these medical teams, voluntary teams, consists of doctors, nurses, and other health professionals. It might be dentists, according to the project. So they go to these countries and for a certain period of time, they set up the system, they conduct the activities, and after they give training to the local staff to enable the sustainability of the activities in these countries. So the main aim of the organizations is to give sustainable support in these countries. Apart from health, also there are some support in other areas, such as access to clean water. For example, in countries in Africa, which do not have access to clean water, which is very important for health. Also, nutrition supports, like in countries like Yemen. And there are trainings, as I mentioned, in the certain projects to the local staff on health, how to operate these activities. So, after the migration influx to Turkey in 2011, also the activities of the projects started to take place in Turkey, aiming refugees. So before that, it was mostly in other countries other than Turkey. So after 2011, so there are big migration. There is big migration from Syria. We started to operate in the camps that refugees are settled in temporarily or for more periods. So we started to operate in the camps. But as time goes by, there are more refugees in the urban areas. So our operations also included cities, such as the refugees are mostly densely populated, such as Antep, Urfa, Kilis, Hatay, and also Istanbul, which I am based in, and our headquarters is based in. So we started to found community centers and refugee health centers, health clinics also. Some of these projects also are in cooperations with bigger organizations such as WHO, or we also have cooperations with Ministry of Health of Turkey. We aim at giving support regarding health, such as giving information on health, enabling the access of refugees to health services in Turkey, also giving psychosocial support to the refugees by consisting support groups, or by giving psychoeducation, or by enabling them to have individual psychotherapy sessions if they need, because most of them are also, we know that might be traumatized, might experience different difficulties, psychological difficulties or psychiatric difficulties. So we also give support on these issues. So this project also started in 2014, which I was part of it as a volunteer of Doctors Worldwide. So maybe to speak about my own story, contributing to Doctors Worldwide, I started as a volunteer because I thought that we need to do something. There are lots of people coming from other countries, not just Syria, but also there are some other countries like Afghanistan, Iraq, and near neighboring countries. So I met a Syrian teacher in Turkey, in Istanbul. She mentioned the needs of the Syrian students in Turkey and their psychosocial support needs. And she asked me if you can give any support as a psychologist. So I quickly bring that up to Doctors Worldwide, which I was also a part of as a volunteer. Then we conducted a project to support both the Syrian students in Istanbul, in that Syrian school at that time, and also the support the teachers. So we conducted a school-based psychosocial support program. And then we give some trainings, we give some supervisions to teachers, and so that they know how to support the students, their students, and how to increase their psychological well-being. So this is how my story started at 2014. Since then, I work in this area of refugees. I worked in also some other organizations such as Turkish Red Crescent. But since the beginning of this year, 2020, I am also, right now I am again part of Doctors Worldwide. So it was a busy year. Maybe we will talk about in detail about this thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sister Shema, for the wonderful introduction. It's very inspiring how you started as a volunteer and now you ended up doing really amazing projects. And I think psychological therapy and to refugees who have been traumatized from war, from all this trauma that happened, is really, really important and it's really needed. Yeah. So next we have Brother Hammam from Lebanon. Brother Hammam, maybe you would like to introduce about Kainuna Social Enterprise, and how did you start this organization? What made you start? What inspired you to start? And what kind of projects and activities that you conduct at this organization?
Thank you, Brother Hassan. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. To start the Kainuna story, we have to go back one step further to wafalend.org, which we initiated 10 years ago with a partnership in Indonesia with our brothers in Indonesia to do microfinance and capacity building for refugees globally, starting from Indonesia after the tsunami and going worldwide. The problem I found with Wafalend or microfinancing is that most of the projects we have, especially in Lebanon, need a range bigger than the amounts we were offering, need more services, need more coaching, need other tools and scaling scheme for them to become more sustainable, to become more profitable, and hopefully elevate their status from being poor to above poverty line. And that's where Kainuna came from. And Kainuna is in English means a many version of an entity. So Kayan is an entity and a Kainuna is a many version. And our theme behind it was we start very little together and eventually down the road you will become an independent entity capable of standing on its own. And I always had a problem with how we treat non-profit and aid and organizations that work as NGOs or civil society, is we never empower these organizations with regular tools and regular standards that we hold the other businesses with. For example, if an NGO would spend 50% of its budget On marketing, we will call them and we will judge them, and we probably be prosecuted for wasting money. Where, for example, LG has over 75% of its budget is spent on marketing. And the whole idea behind it is these NGOs and treat them as business entities, and do everything in such a way that they have all the tools required. So we empower them in marketing, we pay attention to branding, to exposure, to business plan, to cash flow ideas. We treat NGO as a business when it comes to creating the product, when it comes to delivering it, when it comes even to pricing it. And so Kainuna started with a motto that says you can do good to the society and at the same time do well for yourself as a business, as a social enterprise. How can we embody this social element to serving your society within your own business model, not from outside, not as a social responsibility act? So we partner up with Wafa now on a project called We Learn, which is in Arabic نتعلم, a hybrid between net and ilm. So net and knowledge, we called it نتعلم. And it's basically, we found out that more than 50% of Syrian refugees' kids don't go to school, which is a scary number. Globally, it's a very scary number, especially when you see the reasons for kids not going to school are very simple and we could easily overcome them. And going to school is accessibility. Because they live in remote areas, refugees camp, they don't have either needed permissions to go from one place to one place. So we, Islamic Development Bank, partner up with Wafa on a $7 million project to create this online platform where we don't provide an alternative learning mechanism. We provide a complementary education system, believing that Syrians eventually will go back home. And once they go back home, they have to be enrolled within schools and their own system. What we do is to try to keep them at the same stage. So once they go back, they're capable, equipped, and up to the same level they should. This project is going to see light hopefully by the end of this year. Now we're in the final stages of preparation. And trying to, this project is matched fund Islamic Development Bank. So if then that's it.
Thank you so much, Brother Hammam, for the introduction about your organization and the partnership with Wafa. I think it's very important. Early childhood education for refugee children is really important, because that is the key for them to access more opportunities when they grow up. Without proper education, especially at a young age, it's very challenging, not just for refugee children, but any child in the world. So education and promoting literacy is very important, and that what you're doing with the organization is really inspiring. That is what needed nowadays. So next we have Miss Lillian, co-founder of Gitani Foundation. I personally have worked with Gitani Foundation previously on some events, and we have done some partnership before. And you guys are doing amazing things, especially now during the coronavirus pandemic and the restriction movement order in Malaysia. So maybe, Ms. Lillian, you can share a little bit about Gitani Foundation. What are some projects, current project activities, and also what made you start as a person? I know you started really, you have been in this field for many years. And maybe you can tell our viewers on more about the foundation, more about the work that you do, and your story as a person. What made you start? What made you inspired to do it?
Thank you, Hassan. It's really a pleasure to be on this webinar with such fantastic activists, so inspiring, all of you. I'm so happy to hear the stories of Seema and brother Hamam, and of course you yourself, Hassan, with all the wonderful work that you do yourself, inspiring so many of us every day. So I think to start a little bit about, our organization, but also, as you mentioned, how I started as an individual, basically getting involved in working with refugees and trying to advance the rights and dignity of refugees. It did actually start a long time ago for me when I was in undergraduate, and I was studying in the US, actually, in New York. And I realized at that stage, when I was far away from this region, that there were parts of this region, not Malaysia, but Indonesia, and at that time it was actually the province of Aceh, that was experiencing conflict. It was experiencing a civil war for many years, for about 30 years, before the tsunami, before Aceh became a famous place. And I met refugees from Aceh in New York while I was studying, and the things that I heard from them actually really surprised me. It surprised me that I was literally, just a very short distance away from this province of Indonesia, and yet here in Malaysia we had so little information about the conflict, about the war, about the kind of difficulties people were facing. And it kind of drove me to start discovering more what was happening in Aceh, but also just getting to know the lives of the people from that community at that time who were in the US. Then I graduated, and I came back to Malaysia, and I still tried to meet and understand what was happening with the Aceh community here in Malaysia. Then I discovered that there were at that time about 50,000 Achenese refugees who had fled Aceh to find a refuge in Malaysia and safety in Malaysia while the war was going on. And that's when I started. I was still very young and new at this. It was very voluntary for me as well when I started, and I basically started to collect information, to do interviews. My own training is social science, so I was trained as an anthropologist. And I used that skill basically of being able to interview and understand communities from their perspective to try to capture the realities of their struggles and their protection challenges and present that to UNHCR. So I would do it as kind of a participatory research. And UNHCR valued that information because they actually didn't have any at that time on the Achenese community. So even at that stage, I wasn't working as a professional. I was kind of working as an independent voluntary researcher. But, the information that was being generated by that kind of engagement, I saw that it did have an impact. It did actually allow the institution, UNHCR, to understand that community better. So it became a real passion for me. And it also, sort of started carving out for me a kind of a more professional dedication. And I basically decided that I would really dedicate my life to doing this kind of work. And in fact, there was a very particular moment when I really made a decision that I would work not just on refugees, but on peace building, on humanitarian commitments, assistance. And it was actually back in the year 2000, when I lost my mentor, who was Achenese. I was still in the US. I was just about to return to Malaysia, and this mentor of mine, who was a refugee and a permanent resident in the US, he flew back to Aceh to attend a few meetings, and he was kidnapped during his visit back. And 1 month later, after being basically missing, his body was found, dumped at a roadside and totally mutilated. And it was a very scary time, but it was basically the moment when I felt I had to make a decision. Sorry, it's very heavy rain here. I basically felt I had to make a decision at that time about whether I would, continue to dedicate myself to this type of work, which was human rights, peace building, protection of vulnerable people, including refugees, and everything else that basically encompasses working in this type of field, or if I would just get out of it at that point. And my decision was to continue and to dedicate myself fully to that type of work, but to do so in a way that I was not putting myself or other people at risk. So to try to understand better how to do work in a dangerous field and a risky field in a way that was responsible, in a way that was ethical, in a way where you're not raising suspicions of authorities, in a way that you're, being very transparent about your intentions. So it was really a learning process for me, and it still is. I think, having even type of work for the last 18, 20 years, since I was really a teenager, actually, it's still been a learning process at every step of the way. And I think that's an important thing to think about. So I had a career, I had a humanitarian career as well. I worked in Aceh after the tsunami also. So, I worked on the peace process and the refugee issues. But then when the tsunami hit, I actually worked in Aceh for about 4 years as an aid worker, basically coordinating aid responses, large aid responses with a few organizations, with Oxfam, with the World Bank as a consultant, advising the governor. But all those experiences, at the end of the day, I still felt that I wanted to be able to found an organization with, comrades and colleagues who really saw eye to eye, and to have an organization that was much more focused on actually having people who were affected directly by conflict and affected by displacement take the lead in that organization. So the word Gatanyo, our name, is actually an Achenese name. It means all of us. It means, like in Malay, kita, right? It means everybody, basically all of us. It's a very inclusive word, and we like that word because it really reflects the ethos of the organization, which is, number one, you can't do anything alone, right? Everything has to be done in partnership and with recognition and respect and giving dignity to the other. So even when we talk about, in some ways we're a humanitarian organization, but we don't like talking about beneficiaries in that sense. It's not about us giving help to another. It's about us recognizing that another community or another person might be in a situation where they may need protection, they may need assistance, and it could be something that at this moment in time we might be able to help them with. But it's also with the recognition that they themselves have the ability to change their own destiny, and we should always work towards that. We should always work towards empowerment. We should always work towards building leadership. We should always work towards building resilience. And also, that even in a crisis situation, it's people who are affected by crisis who are best placed to make decisions on their own. So it's trying to give that kind of freedom. So this is why actually now, even in the organization, I'm actually the only Malaysian who's full-time in the organization. Everybody else in the team is a refugee, except for one person who's a wonderful fundraiser of ours, but she's Australian. But who actually you introduced us to, Hassan, Madam Gail. So we've got a very cosmopolitan team. It's fantastic, but it's also one where we recognize that everybody has a role to play, everybody has a strength, and it's not a kind of organization where it's top down. The programs we do as well are very much decided by the entire team. So we had a flagship program, which was a homeschooling program for Rohingya women, basically literacy program at home, that was designed by our Rohingya coordinator, Hassan, and we've got, another program, which is basically a lot more focused on, trying to look at identifying, the vulnerable families with pregnant mothers. Again, that's something that was really identified as a priority by the members of the team, especially our Afghan, women's teacher, who really wants us to work on this program. So there's a lot of input, and it's a very flexible organization, which I really love about it. And as much as, it's been a very good experience to have experiences working with other large organizations, for me, my heart is with this organization because I feel that it's responsive, and it's something which, it's always different when you have a kind of independent entity that you can shape yourself, and it brings you into a world where you interact with so many wonderful and inspiring people, especially the people who we work with.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction about the organization and about how you started. It's heartbreaking for the loss that you encountered, but I think everything happened for a reason, and we all encounter experiences that make us who we are and make us believe in something, in a purpose that we do in life. So moving on to the next question, to Sister Shaima from Turkey. This question will be for all speakers one by one, but to start with in Turkey, if you could brief us, how was the refugee situation before the coronavirus outbreak? And what were some of the main challenges in Turkey at that time encountering refugees? Turkey has one of the highest numbers of refugees, especially Syrian refugees in the camps. There are over 1 million. And the support, the lack of funding and everything, all these challenges that have been happening, I'm sure it has increased somehow, or it has changed somehow in terms of alternative access to all these resources, especially now during the coronavirus. So if you could just tell us briefly what are the challenges before the coronavirus and what are the challenges now during the pandemic? And are there any alternative from the government and the organization, NGOs, non-governmental organization, in terms of supporting the refugees during this time? And of course, what is the role that Doctors Worldwide Turkey is playing especially during this time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as you said, Turkey, because of Turkey's geographical situation, it's on the migration routes, and because of the conflict in the neighboring countries, the migrant issue is always a big, sometimes a big challenge, but also a big agenda for Turkey. So since 2011, it became more dense with the crisis and conflict in Syria and displaced people in Syria. So right now it is almost 4 million registered Syrians in Turkey. And also there are some migrants from other countries as well, like Afghanistan, Iraq, and Iran, and some African countries, we might say. So it's a really big issue that needs to be dealt with both governmental organizations and non-governmental organizations such as Doctors Worldwide. So before COVID-19, maybe I can summarize that actually there was a real system for the refugees, Syrian refugees, under temporary protection, which is their status in Turkey right now. And there are some people in international protection. And also, as I mentioned, there are right now undocumented migrants. Also, they can locate in Turkey. So there were some challenges, of course, regarding adaptation, regarding employment, but also there is a great coordination of government and non-governmental organizations on these issues. And also there are some international supports like EU, some EU-funded projects or UNHCR. So these projects aimed at easing the health access of refugees and basic needs and education. So they can use the health, education, and other services just as the citizens of Turkey, so they can access health. But there were some issues regarding language. Language might be a barrier accessing these services, so they might need translators, or children learn Turkish better, they learn the language faster and easier, so they might use children as translators. So one of the focus of these projects was to teach the language for them to enable the access to services easier. But this was always a challenge, which remains a challenge right now as well in this situation. Other than that, there were some cases of child labor. So there are some projects aimed at increasing the school attendance of children, so decreasing child labor. And this is also about their concepts of future, because some migrant children might think that they don't have future in any other country. So they might think that even if I study, even if I learn Turkish, that doesn't matter, I don't have any future. So this was a really big issue. So that's why I think we need more role models on that. But the projects aimed at the attendance of children to schools. And the other challenge was register employment. So this is regarding the medical, the basic needs, the financial needs. So it is the basic thing just to survive in a new country, but to find a job in certain cities especially was difficult. So that's why there might be a problem of employment and just livelihoods to sustain their lives in Turkey. So these were the main challenges. And also in some cities, there are some problems of social harmony with the host community and also migrants. So also there are some other projects aiming at the increasing social harmony of the migrants in the new country. And you might as well know that before this COVID-19 issues just started to in Turkey, there was an influx of migrants to the bordering cities, Greek border. So there was a crisis in this area, but right now it is also managed by moving these refugees to secure areas and just conducting some tests in order to just to see if they have COVID-19 or not, and they stayed isolated for 14 days. Then they relocated to other secure places. So that was the biggest challenge for us since the start of 2020 that we had regarding refugees, because it was really difficult for them to stay in there, and it was also the response of the Greece, and there was a difficulty, violence. So it was the biggest challenge. But after, maybe if we need to talk about after COVID-19, as I said, language is a big problem because of the access of correct information. So there might be some rumors, there might be misinformation regarding the virus or regarding the other issues about access to health service, because there are some restrictions, as you mentioned, in many countries, and also there are some restrictions in Turkey as well, such as some days you cannot go out, so there is these lockdowns in the houses, and sometimes you cannot go to hospitals in certain areas without having these symptoms. If you have symptoms of COVID-19, of course, you can ask for help, you can call a hotline, and there's also Arabic translations in there. But regarding the correct informations, they might not access to information regarding the language barrier. And also there is this fear of stigmatization, because in most of the situations in all over the world, there is this risk of stigmatization, or there is this worry of stigmatization of refugees. There might be some rumors that they carry the virus, although we know that that is not the fact. Actually, the virus doesn't recognize any race or any identity. We know that right now, but this fear of stigmatizations might keep them to seek for help, seek for health service, to go to hospitals, or they might just have the fear that they might just relocate to other countries. So it might stop them from asking this help. And so there is this more need for basic needs. As I mentioned, employment was always an issue, but right now it is more difficult to work because of these restrictions. So the need for basic needs is increased, like food, and it also includes right now hygiene, because it is really important to protect from this virus. And also the concept of basic needs changed, because right now this Wi-Fi and internet, I think, is a basic need, so that we can connect, we can share information, or we can support our participants or our targets in giving support to them. And also masks are right now a basic need, because you cannot go into the markets or social places without masks. So there are more increased needs such as masks and Wi-Fi, we can say. And there is less social support because of social isolation. Maybe before COVID-19, they could gather among themselves, or we also organized some support groups, and we also organized some training, psychoeducations, but this is now a difficulty. So there might be a less sense of social support after COVID-19, we might say. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Shaima, for briefly telling us about the situation in Turkey regarding the refugees and in general. There are actually some follow-up questions, but we may not have time for that. So because time is limited. So maybe I move on to Brother Hammam. What is the situation like in Lebanon for the Syrian refugees or the Palestinian refugees or any refugees in general who are based in Lebanon? What were some of the challenges that Lebanon has with refugees before the coronavirus, and what are the challenges that are currently now happening? And what is the role that the government or NGOs are playing, especially during this time? And for example, like your organization, are there any programs? Are there any aids distribution? Are there any healthcare campaigns that is going on at the moment to support the refugee community in Lebanon?
Thank you, Hassan. Lebanon has always been a dilemma when it deals with refugees because of its very tight and critical sectarian system. It has always been very careful when it deals with refugees, and it has two categories which are dealt with differently. The Palestinian refugees, which become a reality for Lebanese, and sending them back or them enabling them to go back seems to be far-fetched and not possible in the near future. And the Syrian refugees, where it still seems like they can go back. So when it comes to our projects in Wafa, we specialize in economical empowerment at the beginning, which means these people, these refugees that are located in this area, we need to enable them and empower them with every possible tool for them to survive, become resilient, and prosper. So this was permissible at some level for the Palestinian refugees, yet when it came to delivering our services and product to Syrian refugees, it was a big no kind of approach. Because we fundamentally believe, and we might agree with some of our brothers and sisters here in the panel, I fundamentally try to oppose aid at some level and try to get everybody to think from a social investment aspect, even when it comes to aid. Because again, we have the famous Chinese idiom that says, "Teach a man, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, you feed them for life." So the whole fundamental approach of Wafa was the money pumped into aid globally is astronomical, and you cannot comprehend the money that was spent there. Yet the problems are still there. We haven't, in the past 100 years, we haven't gotten rid of a single poverty or challenge that aid and refuge workers have been working on, because we've been doing it all wrong. We have to adopt certain tools and different approaches in order to overcome these challenges. And Wafa came in play, and the social economical empowerment become the best tool to do so. However, speaking now, our repayment, for example, what we do is Qard Hasan, which means zero interest loans for refugees. Right now, our repayment rate used to be 98%. But giving the certain, Lebanon has been going through crisis, economical crisis, since the movement that happened here 7 months ago. So in the last 7 months until now, our repayment has been less than 10%. Why? Because nobody is working. There isn't an economical ecosystem working to support these people. And our motto got exposed because now people need aid more than economical empowerment. So I realized at a later stage that we, as a social economical empowerment organizations and aid organization, complement each other. There isn't a solution better than the other. They both complement each other, and there is a need and place for each one. So COVID-19 came and exposed this model and this flaw in our model. But early on, we have supported more than 10 different projects when it comes to aid, and they came very effective now when it came to COVID-19. We have over 5 projects that we have supported as Wafa and Kainuna, delivering aid. Food is, you will not believe how food is a necessity in Lebanon now. How people are spending. The biggest story was 2 months ago, a person committed suicide just because he couldn't afford a manusha or a za'atar pie for his kids to go to school. So it only cost him 50 cents. And this shows us the importance of delivering food and making sure, especially in inshallah, we all reach Ramadan in a better state in a couple days. This will expose this need even further. One of the projects we worked on was Tiyab al-Eid, which means Eid clothing. We all remember that Eid, preparing our Eid and shopping our for Eid clothes used to be one of the happiest joys of Eid, and this is a luxury that a lot of refugees don't get the chance to experience. So we opened a free shop for second-hand clothing, and what we did is we take them, we clean them in a laundry shop, we package them like new, and we put them in shelf like an actual store, and we invite refugees to come to the store, shop around for a full wardrobe for Eid, and get to experience this joy of Eid, especially in these coming days. So again, the situation in Lebanon is tricky. Lebanon has received more than enough of share of refugees, and to be honest, you cannot force them to handle more. The population of Lebanon has been doubled with refugees, which is economically, socially, is something I do appreciate. Turkey has done a lot in this regard and has taken more refugees than anybody else. But when it comes to Lebanon have been doubled the population only by refugees in the last 5 years, which is a big burden. And it shows you why they're always in a struggle when it comes to dealing with the Syrian refugees. But I think COVID-19 has brought people closer and has bridged a lot of cultural gaps and stigmatization that we were talking about, especially in the Lebanese culture. Now, refugees are considered part of the society in terms of the struggle and the challenge that we are all going against. Today or yesterday, they've discovered the first case of COVID-19 in the Palestinian refugee camp, which will shift the whole focus and the battle and the situation in Lebanon to another level, especially in the doorsteps of Ramadan. So I think we cannot evaluate it yet because it's a developing story and it's a developing challenge. But I think everybody is, again, the gap has been bridged between a lot of people. And Wafa has, since it became a member of ECOSOC, the United Nations non-governmental organization, has managed to bridge a lot of gap between the governments, the NGOs, the individual. So I think we have the phase after Corona, which we're going to talk about, is going to be a big opportunity for everyone to develop creative, innovative solutions to work.
Thank you so much, Brother Rahman, for briefly telling us about the situation in Lebanon. I think teaching refugees how to earn by themselves without depending 100% on NGOs and aids is really important. But in a time like this, the coronavirus pandemic is affecting everybody in the world. The whole worldwide is affecting everybody economically, socially, and in terms of it's a global issue right now. So the main needs at the moment for most refugees and not just refugees but any marginalized communities around the world would be really access to just food and proper healthcare and shelter. These are the main. So speaking about that, Lillian, I know, as a refugee myself in Malaysia for the past 8 years, refugees have been struggling here in Malaysia even before the MCO, even before the coronavirus, not being allowed to work legally. Access to education and healthcare is very lacked. How do you think the Malaysia is handling refugees right now during this pandemic? And maybe you can share with our other speaker from Turkey and Lebanon on what were some of the challenges before the coronavirus pandemic, and how did it change now? How did these challenges change now? What are some alternatives and solutions from NGOs and governments at the moment to that help the refugees in this pandemic?
Thanks, Hassan. I think for Malaysia, it's been a very strange time, I have to say. I mean, we've started this year just so full of uncertainty. And the uncertainty, of course, is everywhere because of the virus, the coronavirus. But I think for Malaysia in particular, we also went through a very dramatic period of political transition, which was a big shock and quite destabilizing for so many things. And, for the last 2 years prior to this, it looked as if, policies on refugees, thinking at least on policy on refugee was going in a more positive direction, because we had government under Tun Mahathir, which was elected the Coalition of Hope, this government, which the previous government actually, which they had a commitment to developing a policy framework that would advance the right of refugees more legally, and they hadn't already designed a full policy, but they were in the discussion the whole of last year. There was a lot more discussion about what the framework should be for documentation of refugees legally, what the options are for extending work rights to refugees in a broader way, not just through some small pilot projects, but also looking at the education issue. How do you actually extend forms of accredited education to refugees, even if maybe Malaysia isn't ready to yet allow refugees into national schools? But there was a real discussion about all these issues. And I think that, it was a huge setback for those of us working for refugee rights in this country to see the uncertainty of this political transition, because it really threw everything into, this kind of unknown land where we actually don't know where we stand anymore in terms of making advances on the discussion in terms of refugee rights and policies on refugees. What we do know is that, many of the members of the new government have worked on issues that are relevant to refugees before. So, the former foreign minister from the last government, who's in this government as well, he's still in the cabinet. He was a very strong advocate of refugees. So there's still the hope that he would still try to advance those rights. The current prime minister is a former home minister and has been deputy prime minister before. Is very experienced, a very experienced statesman, and also understands the issues that are relevant to refugees. So I don't think the discussion will totally go away, but I think that now with obviously with the priority of coronavirus and protecting everybody in the country, that basically has changed the scenario a little bit. So the discussions won't be so much on rights to refugees and looking at an actual framework, but I think the coronavirus response is a bit ironic, because on the one hand, it delays discussions on a lot of these issues, but at the same time, it opens up some other possibilities of discussion, right? So I think that one of the things that everybody's discovered, especially the government, is that having undocumented persons, refugees, stateless persons, undocumented migrants, having this population where you have no data and no proper documentation is an enormous risk when it comes to managing a pandemic, right? So I think that the realization of the government side is, my God, we actually need UNHCR and NGOs and all these people who know who these people are and are working with the communities to work with us so that we know how to, number one, reach these communities with proper information, and number two, be able to reach them with assistance so that we are ensuring that people are not being left behind, right? In, this attempt to control the coronavirus, obviously it's as well. So I think it's been a very kind of mixed picture. I think the government has made some very important policy decisions, they actually did it quite early on. So one was that basically everybody, all foreigners,
I think I can't hear you. The voice
Hi.
has gone.
Sorry.
Oh, okay, okay. Now it's back. All right, yeah, that's back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sorry, Hassan. I have multiple calls coming in all the time. So
No worries.
a call comes in, I get muted automatically.
No worries,
So basically, understanding that actually, in order to be able to reach every member of our society, you actually need to know who people are, and you need to know how to reach people, how to communicate to people. So there has been an understanding, I think, a growing understanding on the part of the government. One thing that was a barrier to refugees coming forward for testing was the lack of understanding about whether they would be charged or not. And the government did basically issue this policy that everybody could be tested for free if you had symptoms, and you could be treated for free if you were positive, right? So that was a very good policy, but it wasn't widely known by refugees or migrants, for that matter. Secondly, there's this whole issue about arrest, basically. So would people who would be who would come forward, for testing, would they be at risk of arrest? And that was a huge concern, particularly amongst the Rohingya and the Burmese Muslim community, of which, these are the largest populations you have here is from Myanmar, right? That's the vast majority of our very diverse refugee population here, but the vast majority are from Myanmar. The largest percentage of refugees here are Rohingya, but there are many, many others as well from other ethnic groups. And, many of them don't speak great English. Many of them are depending on translated information. Many of them, hear things word of mouth. There are rumors that spread in communities that just really actually spread a lot of fear and confusion. And I think that not understanding the way those dynamics work, a lack of understanding about how information is communicated, right, in the community, a lack of understanding on the government and even some of the NGOs of their part of how do you actually try to communicate information in a way that convinces the refugee community and gives them assurances, right? What does it take to actually build assurances? And I think those are all really important questions. As an anthropologist, I feel that there's a lack of anthropological thinking around sometimes, the way we handle these issues. And I feel like you have to, it might be my bias, but I feel that it's important because you need to start understanding things from the way a community understands things. And if you can't ignore these things, right? I mean, if the Rohingya community is telling you that it believes certain things are true, it doesn't matter if you keep sending them information that it's not true. If their perception is that it's true, that's going to influence their behavior, right? And in the pandemic, so much of this is about our behavior. It's about our social behavior, how we're interacting with each other, how we are trusting each other and trusting the institutions around us, right? So I do feel that that's really an important thing. So I think that going forward, we really need to be paying a lot more attention to the way to really understanding each other a lot better and knowing how to reach out to each other in a more effective way.
Thank you so much, Lilian, for enlightening all of us on the situation in Malaysia. It is very important indeed to really see from the perspective of the communities where are their needs before really starting a project or before really going into finding solutions. We need to see the main issue and the concerns within the community itself. We might offer something that may not really need or may not really reach the needs of these communities. So moving forward to the third phase of this conversation today is the current solution that are available or the current solution that have been proposed by either your organization, by either your government, by either other NGOs in your country. Maybe you can start with Sister Shaima. If you can tell us what are some campaigns that Doctors Worldwide Turkey are doing at the moment during the coronavirus pandemic for the refugee community in Turkey, and what about the Turkish society? I mean, I know times like this, everyone wants to be safe, everyone wants to have secure and have enough food and everything. And during this time, people tend to maybe sometimes forget others who may be in more need than us. So what is the response so far from the Turkish society, Turkish community in regards to support refugees, especially during a pandemic like this? And if you would share some of the campaigns that Turkey's Doctors Worldwide Turkey are doing at the moment, how can our viewers at home now, how can they contribute to your cause? Maybe you can tell us ways of helping.
Yeah, maybe I can try to briefly summarize. It's a big topic, but
it is.
Yeah, we know that COVID-19, even though it's a virus and it's a physiological process that affects our physical health, but it is more than that. We know, as the other speakers mentioned, there are some social aspects, economic aspects, and psychological aspects. So that's why all the responses to these challenges need to include these aspects as well. So right now, as Doctors Worldwide, we work from home for 1 month actually, and it's another challenge for us to reach the people, the community, refugee community, but we always try to keep in contact with them because they, the most important thing that they need to know, or all of us needs to know, to feel secure and to feel well in these situations, that you are not alone. We are not alone in this problem. We are all affected and we all need to support each other. So that's why we regularly call our registered community, refugee community, that used to attend our activities, that used to get support from us. So we don't want them to feel alone in that. And even one refugee that our psychologist calls that to our psychologist, thank you very much. You are the only one who calls me, and I'm all alone in my home and I cannot go out. So this feedback shows us that how important even just to give a phone call and to ask, are you okay? Do you need anything? And we might call it psychological first aid, giving this support and also giving correct information. So as I mentioned in the challenges, biggest challenge was misinformation. So we try to always give the correct and updated information because it changes on a daily basis. And there are some, maybe there might be new restrictions that the government takes. So we always try to keep informed, and we can also organize these groups in these platforms such as Zoom, like we are doing right now. So we always try to also keep them in touch with their own community and support each other, even without with WhatsApp groups that they might attend, and they might write their questions and they might just ask their worries in there, and they might share worries with our psychologists as well, because this might also cause lots of different anxieties. And government in that sense also, Ministry of Health tries to give the proper information on a daily basis, and also just tries to include all populations, because we know that it's a public health issue. If I'm not okay, if you are not okay, I'm not okay. So we are all connected to each other in that sense. So that's why the health service also includes every person who needs this service, so they can access to a hotline also in Arabic, because the mostly Syrian refugees in Turkey speaks Arabic, but also we try to enable, and other organizations also enable the access to correct information in other languages, such as Afghan, which I mentioned. So these are things that we continue to do. Also, there are some refugee health clinics going on with Doctors Worldwide and WHO. So the activities in refugee health clinic continues. They can just come there and ask for help, ask for support. So these are the continuing activities that we are doing, maybe just to sum up in a short sense. So you can maybe visit the site of Doctors Worldwide. It's yyd.org.tr. So you can visit, and you can also get information from Twitter. that's ongoing activities. And we are also, that's another thing that we are doing as support. There, you know that there are some people who have COVID-19 positive and they are in isolation in the hospitals. So they might need some basic needs such as clothes, such as some hygiene products, and they might not have it because they are in isolation and their relatives cannot visit them. And it's a really sudden procedure that one day you are at home, one day you are at hospital in quarantine because you are COVID-19 positive. So for these people in the hospitals, also Doctors Worldwide provides some packages for them. As I mentioned, it also includes basic needs, but more than that, it gives some social support and it gives a sense that you are not alone in this. You can connect with us.
Thank you so much, Sister Shaima. Now we have a very quick short break. We'll take a very quick short break, 1 minute. And at the same time, while taking the short break, we'll show a video about Brother Hammam's initiative with Nata'allam. So stay tuned. So when we come back, we will continue with Ms. Lilian and Mr. Hammam with more questions.
نتيجة الأحداث في سوريا توزع اللاجئون على عدد كبير من البلدان العربية والأجنبية. خسارة اللغة، الهوية، التاريخ يؤدي إلى خسارة الوطن. المدرسة الرقمية دورها إعادة ربط اللاجئ بوطنه، ومن خلالها سيتمكن الطلاب اللاجئون في جميع أصقاع الأرض من متابعة حصص تربوية معدة سلفا شبيهة بتلك التي تعطى في المدارس السورية. الهدف هو السماح للاجئين في الدول الغربية من متابعة حصص تعليمية أشرف على إعدادها طاقم متخصص لصون هويتهم والمحافظة على لغتهم وإعادة وصل ما قطعته المسافات. المدرسة الرقمية تمنح اللاجئين في الدول العربية فرصة متابعة تحصيلهم العلمي أسوة بزملائهم في سوريا. المدرسة الرقمية مشروع إعادة لم شمل الطلاب السوريين رغم بعد المسافات والحضارات والتقاليد. في شهر رمضان الكريم المساهمة في المدرسة الرقمية له بعد إضافي لأنه يساهم أيضا في نشر العلم والمعرفة في ظل الحجر المنزلي الذي يمر به العالم.
All right, we are back now. Thank you so much. So to continue with our session just now, we have shown a video about the initiative Nata'allam, where it's an initiative to provide education, early childhood education for refugee children, especially Syrian children in Lebanon. So Brother Hammam, maybe you can tell us a bit more about some the challenges at the moment during this pandemic that is affecting the refugees. I know earlier you have told us a little bit, but maybe you can enlighten us a bit more. How is the society, the Lebanese society response towards this issue? Are they coming together as one with Syrian refugees? Are there any issues facing in terms of that? And what is some current initiatives that you are doing to help the refugees? And if there is any, maybe you can tell our viewers at home how they may contribute.
Thank you, Hassan. Let me just recap on a couple of things that both Lilian and Shima said. Starting with Lilian's documentation's importance within this crisis, because this has been one of the biggest things that the international community has been asking for, and a lot of countries have been neglecting this. And they just realize the importance of documenting each refugee. Always people think of it as a privacy issue, as a security issue, but we realized during this pandemic how important it is to evaluate and to have a quick response to the spread of this virus within these undocumented communities. So I think the role of the new NCHR is going to become more important in the future for everybody else. Sister Shima has talked about psychological health, which I think is the cornerstone of what's happening within Corona. Because of the, not to say the virus is not as deadly as it sounds, but this has not been the biggest problem. The biggest problem has been economical and has been psychological. How are we gonna, because these are the main two questions that everybody's asking after Corona. We know that the humanity has come together, Syrian, Lebanese, everywhere. The fact that the Malaysian are treating undocumented refugees and not arresting them or sending them back. This is happening in the Gulf region as well. They're they're treating undocumented foreigners there as well. This has been a global reaction where the global community has come together and set aside all of these differences and managed to treat the pandemic from a health issue. But the two main questions are going to remain. The psychological health of people and how communities are going to get back together after this, and the economical situation. That's why I believe from a Wafa Kainuna perspective that Corona has become a catalyst towards more dependency on technology. It has brought a lot of people who were not big believers on with technology to realize the importance of technology and how it could fill and bridge the gap. And this is not a bad thing. Depending on technology is not always a bad thing. It's all about the how you do it. And this is a chance to grant global access to helping each other to utilize technology. I think it's time to capitalize on the power of the crowd, solving the economical problems and both the social and the economical problems. We have the solution for this, and we've been playing with it for a little bit, but I think now is the time to become and accept this as a solution, which is crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. We are, regardless of how Corona is going to end and how societies are going to react to it, we are going to become in an era that is contactless, physicalless, less physical interactions between people, yet the needs are there. The needs for compassion, the needs for psychological companion, the needs for helping each other, the needs for work. So crowdfunding and crowdsourcing are the solution for what's happening. We are launching this during Ramadan, and it's going to extend until Corona is defeated. Four big campaigns that target four big areas, starting with We Learn, which is an educational platform that we talked about, and then health issue. We're going to try and get enough equipment for Corona prevention and sterilizations within refugees camp. We're going to try and because Eid is and Christmas and New Year's, all of these holidays are pivotal for people's psychological health. And they kind of invest in it to get the emotional support they need throughout the year. So we will try to do some activities and send packages for Eid to everyone we can during this. There's another campaign as well. And we are still working with food and sending packages to everybody. You're going to find all of these campaigns on Launch Good. You can follow my Twitter, Facebook, and social media accounts, and Wafas or Kainunas. They're going to be out there. And we're going to bombard people with advertisement and nagging people to go out and donate. Because this is a way for people who celebrate Ramadan in a different way and think this Ramadan is different. I think this Ramadan is a golden opportunity for everyone to prove to themselves that good is within yourself. It's not about the mass or the culture forcing you to go and pray or do well. This is a chance for you to do good because you want to do well because you want to help people because you want to. You have this thirst to help people, and I think Ramadan is a golden opportunity. and we have an abundance of activities, organizations, ideas, tools, equipments. We have here collectively 3 nice organizations, including Hassan 4, that could provide for each individual of us an outlet for doing good during Ramadan and throughout the year. I think it's not about the ability, it's about the willingness. And I think these seminars, webinars, we have to remind people that once your heart is there, you have thousands of options globally, locally, internationally. Education, money. You can donate your money, your time, your thoughts, your wisdoms, your experiences, your words. This is a golden opportunity that we need to capitalize and then empower ourselves and get ourselves used to the crowd funding and crowdsourcing tools we have out there.
Thank you so much, Brother Hammam, for telling us what the situation in Lebanon. And yes, I do agree with what you say, that in times like this, all of us, every society is indeed already coming together as one, not looking at nationality, not looking at race, religion, just coming at one to face this pandemic that is affecting everybody in the world. Next, I would like to, Miss Lillian. I have seen, amazing, things that you're doing, especially during this time with the foundation, with Ms. Gail, Omar, and the whole team, in terms of distribution aids and the initiative where you guys are supporting refugee mothers who are expected to deliver babies during this time. These initiatives are really great, and I think it's really crucial to have them at this time. Maybe you can tell our viewers more on what is your foundation is doing at the moment. How can people contribute to that, and what do you see the future of this situation affecting refugees in the coming weeks?
Thank you, Hassan. I do think what's been said by our brother Hammam about this kind of challenge that we're all finding ourselves in of the pandemic, dealing with the pandemic, is actually in some ways an opportunity. We feel the same. I think it's always a bit of a mix in a crisis. You have a lot of vulnerability, a lot of acute needs, and that's always very difficult, because to see people in this very vulnerable, difficult situation, of course, is always a challenge. But at the same time, you also see this emergence of goodwill and a level of the melting away of certain barriers, right, and certain prejudices. But I do think it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because you can never generalize, right? I think that we do have that. We have the outpourings from so many Malaysians and so many people of all backgrounds and nationalities in Malaysia. We do see people giving out, including refugees, right? Like Hassan, your initiative of mobilizing and encouraging refugees to actually give back to frontline. That was fantastic, and I think had such a good impact on the understanding and perception that Malaysians had towards refugees. But at the same time, it's back and forth, right? I mean, you also see that here, just in the last few days, there's been this big issue about the boats, the Rohingya boats that have been on their way to Malaysia, and that we've actually in Malaysia pushed away. We allowed one to land, but then the others have been turned away. And there's a lot of hate speech going on now. Today, I think we've all been reading it, this really awful rhetoric that's been going on about say no to Rohingya and pushing back on refugees, and really having this kind of scapegoating refugees for what's happening here. And that's just really unkind, and I think very dangerous for everyone, not just refugees, but for any community here who could become a victim of that type of stigmatization. And I think that the Malaysian authorities need to be very attentive to know how to encourage positive engagement and interactions and sentiment, and let people have this kind of encourage them to do positive things during this period. Encourage those initiatives which are really trying to support each other, as long as it's done in a safe way, right? So, but also to be very attentive to initiatives and language that is being used, and images that are being posted on social media, many of which are fake, which are just being used to stigmatize against another group. And currently, definitely the last couple of days, the target has been the Rohingya. I'm very worried about that. we have raised it with the authorities, and I think the authorities are worried about it as well. But we do need to see, I think, a mix. I think throughout this period, basically of looking at where the positive opportunities are, encouraging those to keep taking root and to expand, scale up the goodwill, scale up people's approach to positive things, but then at the same time also really having an eye to, the risk, right? The risk of having groups being blamed, of stigmatization, of potential, violence that might take place, and we can't shy away from that at all. We have to be very balanced. The work that we've been doing is, it's been very much a humanitarian kind of response, because as an organization that believes in humanitarian principles, we believe that it is there's something called the humanitarian imperative, where, basically you have the duty to respond to meet humanitarian needs if you have the capacity to do so. And we do find ourselves in a situation where there's just, unfortunately, a lot of vulnerability and hunger even all around us, from every community in Malaysia, not only refugees, but, since we know the refugee community better and we're getting a lot of information from them, we've decided in the Klang Valley, we're focusing on refugees. Outside the Klang Valley, we're focusing on many other groups, including, local Malays in the kampong, in the villages. We just did a distribution in Kelantan for 630 families up in Kelantan in very impoverished areas. We've sent aid as well to Orang Asli villages. These are our indigenous communities in Malaysia, who many of them live still in, areas which are very forested or quite remote, and that's a choice that they make, for their lifestyle and for their culture as well, which in some ways is also, we respect very much their preservation of their culture, but it also makes outreach at a time like this become quite difficult, when it means trying to get assistance to people and even some basic food items, which they may not be able to grow on their own or purchase around them. It does make access quite difficult. So we've decided to prioritize a lot of our aid outside the Klang Valley, outside the KL area in Kelantan in the north, a little bit in Kedah as well, including to the new arrivals of the boat arrivals. And we work through partnerships. So we have MAPIM, which is an organization we've been working closely with for many years. And we really trust them and like the way they work. So, this is a time when I think it's a good opportunity to actually foster that partnership, right? Because no organization can be everywhere all the time. And I think it's about knowing how to trust each other, knowing how to say, look, be honest about your capacity. I can work here. I don't have any capacity to work in that other area, but you do. So, let's share the resources. If we have some resources, we can share that with you. You do the purchases and you do the delivery. So there's a lot of that collaboration going on, which I think is fantastic. But I think for the long run, it's really going to be a struggle. I mean, I think, we shouldn't be shy to say that, because the economic challenges are enormous, right? I mean, I think, we are going to see a situation going forward where it's going to be very tough for refugees to get jobs. It was already difficult. We already saw a struggle with livelihoods for refugees, and now it's going to be tougher, because it's going to be tougher for everyone. It'll be tougher for Malaysians, and refugees are generally more vulnerable, right? So it will be even tougher for refugees. So I do think we need to kind of think about these issues more systematically and have those discussions about, hopefully with all the stakeholders, right? Civil society, hopefully the government will encourage that kind of discussion as well, with think tanks, because these are really serious issues that actually need, proper approaches, right, to be able to tackle them.
Thank you for this information. I think it's really important. The point you highlight is partnership and then access to all these humanitarian aids in areas outside of Klang Valley. Most NGOs are based in Klang Valley, therefore the support is mainly for refugees who are based here. But not to forget, there are even hundreds, thousands of refugees outside of Klang Valley area. And I think it's really important to partnership with organizations that are doing aids outside of these areas, so to discover new areas and discover new humanitarian opportunities. Yeah. Thank you so much to Ms. Shima, Ms. Lillian, and Mr. Hammam for the wonderful discussion. And now we have a few minutes left for Q&A. So we have one question from one of our viewers from Facebook. It's for refugees in Malaysia. So I'll read the question to Ms. Lillian. Zakat is one of the Islamic philanthropic tools that can help them. And however, in case of Malaysia, chances for refugees to get assistance is fewer, as majority of the receipt of zakat is local. Instead, as zakat is under the jurisdiction of state of religious council, hence the enactment of each state is different regarding beneficiaries of zakat. It is believed the refugees in Malaysia didn't get this right. What do you think about this issue? And did you have any solution to improve the situation as well, the quality of life and well-being of the refugees in Malaysia? So I'm not sure, Ms. Lilian, if you would be able to answer this question in terms of the zakat assistance from the Islamic Council Affairs in Malaysia for the refugees, if you have any info to share on this.
Sure. So it really depends on the state, right? I think there are certain states which are very comfortable with using zakat for everyone. You know, they really just count basically your vulnerability if you're qualified, right, to receive zakat or not. It's not really about whether you're a citizen or not. And, you know, some of the states are like Perlis. I think Selangor even actually has also declared that their zakat is really for everyone in need. There are certain other states, though, which do limit it and are quite, you know, have said before, maybe even before this COVID-19 crisis, when they've been approached about whether zakat can be used for refugees, they have said that it's not permissible. So I think it's really dependent on which zakat authority, you know, one is engaging. But it's definitely a potential. I mean, we're actually writing to some institutions about zakat and certain states about looking at zakat as a way to mobilize, you know, services and assistance for refugees and undocumented migrants also, because we do feel that there's also this real gap because so many undocumented migrants don't even really have NGOs who service them normally. So that's really a gap. I think that's, you know, the Burmese Muslim community, some of even the Buddhist Myanmar communities with no documents who are from conflict areas but don't have any documents, even the UNHCR card, like they're kind of the ones falling through the cracks now as well. And, you know, I think zakat is one approach for sure. Islamic financing is very innovative and is very attentive, right, to meet the needs of the vulnerable. So I think it should be something that we explore, but also other types of funding. I think, you know, private sector funding is, it's not just about, you know, I think, Hassan, you know this very well, but most of the NGOs now, like we've been functioning on Facebook funding. You know, we've been functioning on literally individuals, you know, who are giving. It's not been big foundations or anything like that. I mean, there's, you know, there's some companies giving in kind, right, giving food items or things like this, but honestly, the majority of the financing has really been from individuals, which has been incredible, but it's obviously not sustainable for the long period, right? So there does have to be a way for, you know, private financing to be able to come in and look actually at where is the impact being made by civil society groups and what's the kind of diversity, which is a really beautiful, rich diversity of approaches and organizations and initiatives on the ground. How is there a way that you can form a kind of a platform, right, that can link some of those initiatives to the private sector? Because the private sector obviously won't have the capacity to, you know, fund everybody, but they might be able to fund a platform or a coalition, right, which I think organizations, you know, you know, many of us would be very happy to work in coalitions because we already like working together. There's already, I think, very good rapport amongst organizations on the ground. And people are already coordinating in terms of, you know, looking at verifying beneficiaries, looking at who's working where, looking at who's giving what. So there's already that kind of cooperative and collaborative spirit. So I do think if there's a way to explore that, you know, the private financing, because the government can't use its budget for these undocumented populations, even though I think that the government has said, you know, certainly in meetings, you know, in private, but I believe they've said it in public as well, that they do really consider the refugee population and the undocumented population part of their responsibility and their concern. But they don't have the ability to use the budget for assistance to that community, at least as yet, right? They don't have that ability to do that now. But they do want to know that that community is not being left behind. So I think that, you know, it's about linking up that a kind of a platform which enables us to monitor whether people are having their needs met and being able to somehow match, you know, the needs with the ability of an NGO to deliver and with, you know, the ability of the private sector to be able to do the financing. So it is possible. I think, you know, there are enough stakeholders and enough, you know, roles within society that would enable something like that to happen. But it's very, it's quite urgent that we actually get that type of multi-stakeholder platform up and running in an effective way.
Thank you so much. I think you gave a wonderful answer. I think it is really important. Funding is a big issue since even before the coronavirus for many years. Funding to provide humanitarian assistance, sustainable assistance for refugee community have been an issue. And we really hope more private sectors would step in to support in terms of providing funding. Which actually brings me to remember we have a webinar coming up I think next week or the week after about fundraising and donation and donors. So for those interested, you can follow Philandro page for more information on this. So we actually have one more question. Actually, we're out of time, but this is a very quick question. So I would appreciate if each speaker maybe can give just a few, a minute less answer of this. The question says, what do you think about the collaboration with UNHCR? This question is, from a Malaysian, but of course it can be answered by the Sister Shaima and Mr. Hammam from Turkey and Lebanon as well. What do you think about the collaborating with UNHCR, not just UNHCR maybe, but bigger organization like WHO and other United Nations agencies in fighting against the battles? So maybe Sister Shaima, maybe you would share something.
I can share briefly. I think that it is important really to collaborate and coordinate with bigger organizations. So right now there are some coordination mechanisms, also UNHCR involved and leading. So we are coming together to share our experiences with different NGOs and also some governmental organizations or Red Crescent Society also included in that. So it is important in the sense that we coordinate with each other in order to just not to repeat the same service in the same areas. As Lilian mentioned, we have different resources, we have different actions, so we might complete each other, and also in the sense that they might provide some financial assistance. So there are some plans for Turkey in coordination with government and UNHCR. So in that sense, I find it very useful to coordinate with bigger organizations.
Thank you, Sister Shaima. Brother Hammam, would you like to add something in terms of collaborating with UNHCR and other agencies? Brother Hammam?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hello?
I can hear. But we can't see the video.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, okay. Yes. Now it's
okay.
Yeah.
We live in a very complex society that is layered with different roles and responsibilities. And I do believe in the ecosystem approach where you have individuals, NGOs, private sector, international community, an organization, and then the government. Because each one of these 5 different entities have a different response rate, different procedures, different targets, different added value to this mix. So I think it's very crucial to first engage the crowds as much as you can. I kind of differ from Sister Lilian on believing in the sustainable power of the crowds. This requires you to engage people more and encourage them more, absolutely, to participate, but it is more sustainable. At the same time, you as an NGO cannot distance yourself from the government and the local authorities and their regulations and their practices, policies, procedures. You have to complement them. Then you need to engage the private sector in funding and responsibly investing the social responsibility aspect. You need the international community to provide you with a global goal, a global guidebook to work, a common goal to work towards. To start with, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals is an international goal that we need all to work towards trying to achieve it. And number 5, we need to make sure that the government is, because you cannot put the full burden in the government. The government will try to support its people as much as it can, but we need to complement their effort and kind of do the things they cannot do, respond faster than they can do, and hopefully make decisions faster than the government can do. So this whole ecosystem is definitely a healthy thing and a necessity, not a choice, I think.
Thank you so much, Brother Imam. Lillian, would you like to add anything on this question about collaboration? I think you have mentioned some points very important on collaboration, and but is there anything you would like to add on in this question before we close the webinar?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think that there has been increasingly positive collaboration between UNHCR and civil society, and more importantly, refugees, right? And I think there's still a long way to go, but I have seen improvements, that's for sure. So I do think, at least for the Malaysia context, there's a growing, engagement by UNHCR with refugee communities, refugee leaders, really trying, maybe we'd all like to see more of that, but, we all want to see more refugee leadership, right? And, refugees as decision makers and really leading discussions about, your own communities, basically. And I think that it is starting to change a little bit, not quite enough, but I do think we are starting to move in that direction at least. So, just the fact, that you are on so many of these discussions, Hassan, and, your leadership is recognized, your opinions are taken seriously, and, there are other refugees who are, in public fora now, right, that are speaking to the media, who are speaking to parliamentarians, who are out there speaking at different types of fora, who are on panels now. That's not so unusual as it was a couple of years ago. So I think that's a good thing. That's not just UNHCR, obviously. That's really, it's refugees themselves, and also I think NGOs who've been, who are sensitive, to that, who don't try to represent refugees, but who try to facilitate the representation of refugees for themselves, right? And I think that's a really important approach to take. But I think certainly for COVID, we have seen collaboration with HCR, not just with NGOs, but also with the authorities. I think that's been important. But it's a struggle because of the scale. It's just like basically, this is an office and a setting where we're not used to dealing with big humanitarian emergencies. And now here we are faced with a very complex humanitarian emergency, which is affecting everybody in the country. And, it's not something that's that easy to deal with. And also, the fact that we're dealing with a largely urban refugee population that are concentrated in certain cities, but also at the same time having some refugees who are scattered all over the country, but particularly the Rohingya population, who are literally from the north to the south. So, the scale of the problem is large, right? And that's not a problem which anybody can solve on its own. So I do think, again, just having more of that collaboration. And hopefully, I think the most important player, we're all important, but I think that more than UNHCR even is really the government. I think the government needs to be engaging a lot more with the actors who are working on refugees. It needs to be engaging with refugees a lot more. I see that happening slowly, but I'd love to see more of that in the future as we continue to deal with this pandemic together.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, to our dear viewers at home, thank you so much for being with us, and special thanks to our speakers, Ms. Shaima, Mr. Hammam, and Ms. Lillian for taking the time of all the work they are doing to be with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So we actually have more webinars coming up in the coming weeks. So please follow PHILANTHROPY page, and also we will share the organization that of our presented speakers today on our social medias. If you would like to follow them, if you'd like to contribute to them, please do so. And now I would like to pass the floor to Mr. Khalid to conclude the session and the webinar. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Hassan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hassan.
Brother Hassan. Thank you, Sister Lillian, Simon, and also Brother Hammam. So we at Philanthro believe that this is a small initiative that we have, that we would like to educate the public that everybody in this world is a migrant. We are refugee in this world. So no matter what, whether you are Syrian, whether you are Malay, you are Chinese, or you are Arabs, or you are Palestinian or Turkish, we are all refugee on this earth. So our responsibility towards each other is to provide the best solution for each other, and not to put blame to the refugee, because I feel very hurt because of the incident that happened in Malaysia within this week, within this 1 week, when the issue of when the Malaysian Navy have to push away the boat coming from the Rohingya refugee. At the end of the day, there is more than 20 people died because of that incident, and I start to feel sad when Malaysia as a peaceful and lovely country, out of sudden the citizen become full of hatred. They said that go away Corona, go away Rohingya. But at the same time, what if we are at their place? Are we going to do the same thing? Or how this kind of supremacy that I believe, which is a new virus of humanity, the black supremacy, the white supremacy, the Malay supremacy, the racial supremacy, all this supremacy virus is, yeah, we need to stop it. So we hope that this small initiative that we do now will give education to our world citizen. That's why we bring together from Lebanon, from Turkey, from Malaysia, to understand the actual situation. So with that, I really appreciate the participation from all of us, Brother Hammam, Sister Saima, and also Sister Lillian. Thank you very much. Viewers, please spread this peace and love message to others. We as a world citizen, we are not, our responsibility is not only to take care of ourselves, but to take care of everybody. Thank you very much. I think that's all for today. See you next week, inshallah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullah.
Walaikum assalam.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.